Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today's conversation is about culture, identity, resilience, healing, and the ways our personal histories can shape a lifetime of service. My guest is Dr. Diann Kitamura, an educational leader whose career has spanned more than 4 decades in California public education. She has served as a teacher, administrator, superintendent, deputy superintendent, university lecturer, mentor, and advocate, but always with a focus on equity, opportunity, and supporting the success of others. As a third-generation Japanese American, Diann's journey into education was deeply influenced by her family's history. Her mother was incarcerated at the Amache internment camp during World War II and later faced racism, isolation, discrimination when she returned to public education. So those experiences became part of her foundation that inspired Diann's own commitment to education, justice, and service. Many know Diann for her leadership as superintendent of Santa Rosa City Schools, where she guided the district through devastating wildfires and the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, she serves as executive director of the California Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander American Affairs, helping elevate the voices and experiences of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities throughout California. So in this conversation, we will explore the experiences that shaped her and the lessons she learned through adversity and how culture, identity, healing, and hope continue to guide her work and leadership. I cannot thank you enough for being on Moving Forward, the podcast. And as the listeners heard, with your schedule and everything you're involved in, again, thank you for giving the time to this conversation.
Well, it's my pleasure, Linda, to be able to share some time with you. It's also been a pleasure to get to know you. We did not know each other before this conversation, and mutual connections and colleagues have connected us. And so I'm really looking forward, first of all, to getting to know you better, and then what questions you might have for me that I might be able to share some of my experience and insight.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And, to the listeners, I hope they're hearing that, your journey in life, it leads you to all different people that enter it. And through those connections, through that kindness that you show, and Diann, you definitely made an impact on so many people. So
Thank you.
let's start with your family legacy and your identity.
Sure.
Your mother's experience at the Amache internment camp and her return to public school after World War II became an important part of your family's history. But what did you learn from her that continues to guide you today?
Well, I think it's interesting because in actuality, my family never really talked about the internment. I think it was so traumatic that it was something they just wanted to forget when they came back to California. Um, it isn't through, it isn't until I've been able to ask questions and talk with her about it that she's begun to share more. But I think the important fact is that I think they felt a certain kind of way about hiding this information. So I don't know if it was shame. I don't know, the different things that happened to them. It was probably very traumatic, which is why this has impacted me so much. She came back to California as a 12-year-old. She was 12 years old. And so in going back to school, public school, she expected to go back like she had left 3 years earlier, with her friends and her teachers and, learning all the things that that would have been a 9-year-old should learn. But that wasn't the case. When she came back to school, to the same school that she grew up in with her neighborhood school, it was actually fraught with so much hate and prejudice
Mm,
that she did not realize that this was going to happen to her.
mm,
She was, instead of being in the front of the classroom like she used to be, she was relegated to the back of the classroom.
mm.
Instead of her papers getting the 100% marks and the A's and B's, her papers were thrown away. Um, so it was things like that that came about that she at that time didn't have an understanding with. And because my grandparents were not fluent in English, there was no talking to the school about it, right? Because they were suffering their own
Mm.
discrimination and prejudice as they were coming back into the community to try to make a living. So those stories about public school, the place where it should be the safest, the place in which democracy should be, uh, you know, the top of the chart, like the thing that we do in public education is promote democracy. And public education is one of the ways to do that. To see her rights and her talent and her childhood be impacted by this, what I vowed was that I would go into education and that would never happen to any child ever again. And so that's been my lifelong, pursuit of what's happening. I think additional to that, it is not just that experience, but the kind of leadership that my grandmother and my mother demonstrated throughout my growing up years, is something maybe we can delve into a little bit more that also impacted my journey into education and into leadership.
Yeah, and I appreciate your advocacy because that is so what is needed and continues to be needed even in the world now, in our country now. So yeah, thank you for sharing that
Of
and the
course.
impact that they made on you. And that is what happens. We make impacts. I know you've made impacts on so many people.
Well, thank you.
So, as a third generation Japanese American, how has understanding your family's history influenced your sense of identity, purpose, and leadership?
Yeah, it's so interesting. This question is so interesting because it's really a continuum.
Mm,
So, where I am today at 67 years old and 44 years in education, and compared to when I was 22 and getting my first teaching job, it's so different. My identity was different, my purpose was different, and my leadership was different. And so I think what impacted me from my identity of being a Japanese American at the beginning was much more traditional than it is now. And so if you think about the model minority myth, if you think about assimilation, if you think about the things that happen to people of color when they are in an institutionalized system such as education, where the majority of the decisions have been made not for me, but have been made for the system, for the system to keep on working. And so I think went along with that system earlier in my career, still having those thoughts about what happened to my mom in the back of my mind. And I think as I grew confidence and grew more confident in my teaching and then into my counseling, I was actually a school counselor for 11 years of my career. I began to see the inequities and I began to see that no one was speaking up. And so, I think that goes back to the leadership of my mom and my grandmother, who actually, my mom was not a person who would speak up. Like, if she got really, really upset, she would. But my grandmother
mhm.
actually, so if you think about this, my grandmother actually ran their farm. My grandfather was blind, and so my grandmother was the one who was on the land deeds. My grandmother's one that did the interactions with the other farmers and the businesses. So I saw that and thought, and she didn't speak English very well. So, yeah, so that really impacted me in terms of what I think now today is my leadership. And so I'm going to fast forward to today. And so I think that my identity has been influenced by all the things culturally that I have learned and gathered through my family. And so and then my identity also then drives my values. And then my values drive my purpose. And then my purpose creates the conditions for how I'm going to lead.
Mm,
So it's actually all tied together. And I would say it begins back on a little piece of land in Yuba City, California,
mm.
where my mom's family farmed, and they went through all that they went through. So, yeah.
I'm going to pull out one of the things you said in the beginning was your purpose was different. And, moving forward, as we move forward through every single journey of our
Mhm.
life, our purpose, I think we have the strong purpose, but it changes as we
Mhm.
start thinking about all the other things, including what your family went through and how you're learning. So
Right.
your family story, though, that you shared with us a little, it includes both harsh hardship and resilience. But what does healing mean to you when you think about the experiences your family endured and the lessons that have been passed down through generations?
Yes, I love this question, and I think it relates not only to myself, but the number of ANAPI, ANHPA educators I work with. And that is number one, the recognition and identification and appreciation and love for where you come from. And so many times I have met folks that, uh, Anapi folks, who have hidden that, who have suppressed it, who
Mm,
have tried to mainstream, so that they could be accepted. And I think that, especially in my experiences with CAPL and my experiences on the commission, my experiences as a professor, my experiences these 44 years have helped me to heal myself and my family through acceptance, through love, through authenticity. I'll say it this way. We don't mess around.
mhm,
We call it when we need to call it. And there is no hiding behind any kind of shield. It's really about facing what's happening with us, what we're interacting with, and in the best way we know how, move forward through it, using your terms, navigating it. I say many times to the people that I work with, I coach, I mentor, I am a skilled strategic navigator
mm,
because the way I lead as a woman of color
mm,
is different than other people.
mhm,
Some people can get away with, throw the door open, demand what they want to demand, take up space, take up all the air in the room. That's not the way I'm going to get what I want from my students and my staff. The way I'm going to do it is through what I've learned over the years, which is part culture, and it's a part of how I learn to behave and act within that culture, and then taking what the reactions are from the way I behave and figuring out what do I need to do to get what I want for my students and my staff.
mm,
And so I think that is a huge, that navigator. I also call it 4D. I call it the spidey sense. I call it intuition. I,
mm,
I call it many things that I have learned from my culture, from my identity, um, to apply to how I'm going to move forward as a leader. And so that I think that also, I didn't talk about this earlier, but my core values are actually authenticity, love,
mhm.
and freedom. Those values are much different. You're smiling big. If those of you can't see us, but Linda's really making a big
Yeah,
smile right now.
yeah.
Those, if you ask me what they were when I was 25 and 35, it would be very different. But today, it is love, authenticity, and freedom.
Mm. So I'm smiling because, well, first of all, authenticity is such a big word that I totally believe in. However, and I'm going to go back to when you first started at 22, I think that for the listeners that are young and just starting their journey now, whether it's in education or anything, call it when we need to call it. Thank you for saying that. Navigating it, intuition. I mean, it's things that I hope listeners are hearing, those key words, and oh, so empowering to me. And
Oh,
that I
thank
wish
you.
in my young career of education or wherever I was, authenticity is critical. So I appreciate you bringing that out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
So,
I think Linda, authenticity also breeds respect.
yeah,
I really think that if you are an authentic leader, an authentic educator, an authentic business person, the respect and relationship you will build with others will be stronger, will be truer. And those folks are the ones that help you navigate through doors that are normally closed for you.
true. Yeah, definitely. And how awesome for people to learn that at a young, as they're
Mhm.
starting their career. However, going through the different journeys does help you move even forward more.
Mhm.
So it is good to learn
Mhm.
along the way,
Yeah.
and especially from people like yourself that have gone through all this and more, which is where my next question is going to
Okay.
go. But let me just first go back to your mom.
Yeah.
Your mom's, as we can all hear, her experiences definitely inspired you to become a teacher. But
Mhm.
when did you first realize that education could be a vehicle for change?
So kind of the standard at the time, and I think it's still somewhat of a standard for Asian women, and that is going into fields such as medical, doctor, engineering, things in those highly professional areas. And I failed algebra 2 twice. So it's like that's not was not going to be a choice for me. And so what I loved was teaching. Very, very early on. It wasn't called teaching at the time, but it really was that. And so having that piece in mind that I knew something around education, something around that, then the experiences with my mom and what happened with my mom, and then realizing that as I was starting my teaching career or thinking about teaching, and applying and doing all the things you do to become a teacher, how different it was for people of color and myself than it was for others. And so that really got me thinking about, what is it that is, why can't I get that scholarship? Or why wasn't I recognized to be in that specialized program at that university for, XYZ? So it started to kind of be unravel at that time. I would say that it really wasn't until I experienced the classroom and saw the system and what the system was doing to students that it really began to grow in me, like it began to blossom inside of me. What I didn't tell you about earlier in my life was that I was raised on a labor camp. I
Oh,
spoke Spanish, English, and Japanese, but I didn't know which language was what. I went to kindergarten and there were other Japanese kids there that didn't speak English at that time, and was asked to translate. So I'm like, okay, so I'll translate it, but I translated into Spanish, and the teacher got so angry with me. So I'm 5 years old. I remember this to this day. I remember that I was not put in the highest reading group when I know I should have been in the highest reading group. And so those things along with my mom's experiences, like it just built upon built upon built upon built upon built these microaggressions and aggressions and oppressions and discrimination that I thought, you know what? Back to the democracy thing. If we can teach and students are leaving our systems, understanding their place in the world, and we can collectively have impact, that was my thinking as I grew from these different experiences. And it still propels me today. I mean, it's still something that I think about and are driven by. It's the collective impact that our students can make to right this world. I'm not going to say change it, right what's happening in our environment right now, and
mm.
then moving forward.
In education, but in anything that you're doing, we're going to go more into that, what you're doing now, but it's that impact that you make on people, and you have made such an impact. And I'm going to take you to this next part of your life journey, which
Okay.
wasn't that long ago. When you were the superintendent of the Santa Rosa City Schools,
Hmm.
you led through devastation such as the wildfires and the pandemic,
Hmm.
both. So, looking back, what leadership lessons emerged from those experiences?
Well, there are many. There's many technical ones, just like the technical work that you have to do to get through crises. Okay. Then there's the more strategic and adaptive ones. And so I think one of the biggest things I saw was that even in crisis, the inequities rang true. And so, whether it was who was displaced in the wildfires and who had the ability to have a motel room or had the ability to go to a second home amongst all the smoke, and who was displaced into shelters, and then what's the equitable way to distribute resources for students and families in those situations. We had 800 students lose their home, and we had 100 staff lose their home in the first fire. There were actually two wildfires. And so, as a leader, so it's the strategic things I have to do I mean, the technical things I have to do. Sorry about that. The technical things I have to do. The strategic things I had to do was take care of the students and the staff and the community. It's a part of one, I think, of one of your questions, and that is treating this situation as if every single person was a part of my family. And I always do that anyway. And what would I want for them and what would I do for them? And so that was just having our staff go out to the shelters. That's a difficult decision and difficult thing to ask staff to do. But because I'm an authentic sense-making leader, that is centered on equity, my staff said, sure, where? Give us the list. We'll go find people. We'll go figure things out. So it's different. When we were closed for 3 weeks in the first wildfire, and in coming back, I knew the trauma that everybody was facing in the district. And so one of the leadership's lessons I know is don't be too quick to rush back because you're pressured to get schools
Mm.
started again. And it could be a business get started again or, some other entity. So I took the first 2 days when we were able to go back for the first day for teachers to have group, to basically have group therapy, to basically sit in a circle and talk through what they were going through. Because in my mind, they were not going to be able to teach our children. They were not going to be able to drive our school buses. They were not going to be able to cook our food unless they were okay physically and mentally to do so. So that was the first day. The second day was a day for students to come back and reorient it. So it could be working with counselors. By the way, hundreds of counselors from districts all around Santa Rosa came to our district free. Their superintendents released them to come to Santa Rosa for about a month to help counsel kids and staff, but gave students the time to talk to their teachers, to reacclimate to what school is, not rushing them back into the lessons, creating talking points, creating those things. It is the human side of what needs to happen when you want to ensure your students are safe, they are able to take on, this quote unquote schoolwork. It's really looking at it from a humanistic standpoint. And I will tell you, I got lots of guff for taking those 2 days from the other districts surrounding me,
Mm.
because they went right back into work. My district was the biggest district though around, in the area. And, I said, well, you do you, I'm going to do me. And for me, it is about taking care of my students and my staff in a way that prepares them to get back into the educational world. In terms of the pandemic, I led it in a way that really thought about how I would react or what I would do. Really work together with our labor groups, the community, in order to, get through what we needed to get through for COVID. And then I actually decided to retire in 2021.
Mm.
And I will tell you that the leadership lesson I learned in all of that was that, well, I don't know if this is a lesson. This is a general statement. I was exhausted. I was exhausted. It was my fifth year or my sixth year of being a superintendent, my 10th year being in the district. and actually moved up into interim for superintendency, and then I was hired. Um, and so I began to feel that I wanted to make that choice for myself of what I would do next. And that's where the freedom part comes in for me and my core values.
Hmm.
I wanted to be free, and I really, really hope people can take this in and hear this. I want to be free to make the choices for me to call the shots on them. And so I also wanted to be very authentic to my desire to still love kids, educators, education, and the purpose that I've been put on this earth for. And I was beginning to feel a tinge of bitterness.
Hmm.
And I even said this in a newspaper article. I was going to make the choice to retire before I got to that point. I want to make the choice about what's next for me before it's made for me. And so I think that's one of the biggest, a huge leadership lesson for me. And I wasn't in the best of health, to be very honest with you, because of the pressure and stress leading up to that whole 10 years in Santa Rosa. And so another leadership lesson for me was there's no such thing as work-life balance,
Hmm.
but there is such thing as boundaries. And so I'm learning, learning. I haven't learned. I'm learning about boundaries.
Wow, I am like just mesmerized listening to you because I feel like those last couple statements, you're summarizing my life too, meaning the boundaries part. So thank you. I mean, hopefully listeners are hearing all this because it's so important. But I want to pull out a couple of things that you said too about, as a leader, the emotional part that you really went into with these as they came back from the wildfires and COVID and so on, really getting to the emotional part rather than right away academically. That's so critical. And I know that the community, I'm sure, appreciated everything that you did to get back to that point. It was a very difficult time, but your leadership that you've learned even throughout your lifespan with your family and so on, I feel all these traits that you've taken in and learned and let your mind process and moving forward has led to now where you are, which is, I'm going to take you full circle now.
Mm.
So today you serve as the executive director of the California Association of Asian and Pacific Leaders in Education, and you're also a state commissioner for API affairs. Do these roles feel like a continuation, though, of the work you've always done, or does it feel like a new chapter altogether?
Mhm, mhm. So the first one that I'm an executive director for, you may have heard, is CAPL. And so, yeah, so our organization is about 5 years old. And then the second organization, I was so fortunate to have been appointed by um, Mike McGuire and the governor to be on this commission for API affairs. Um, they are somewhat a continuation of my roles before, but here's the most important part, I think, of these two things. I get to choose what I do. I don't have to go to a board meeting. I mean, it's some kind of some basic things. Like I get to really dig into the work of equity and social justice without having all of these other peripheral things that pull me every which way. And so it's somewhat of a continuation because I've always been about equity and diversity and justice, social justice, but it's different because I get to do the things that I love within that realm, and it's at the statewide level. So that's the other difference. My other roles were local. This is statewide. And so the ability and the opportunity for me to impact is statewide. And how does it feel to be in this new chapter? Pretty damn good. It
Yeah.
feels pretty good. I am enjoying it. I love the legislative work that I get to do around this, because the legislative work for me is about pushing that educators have say in the legislation before it even becomes a bill. So that's going to be my big push. That is my big push.
So I want to pull out equity though, because equity, it's so important, and I'm not sure we're there yet in
Oh,
this country and in this world. So, but you've gone through it, in the past 4 decades. How has your understanding of equity evolved though over the past 4 decades?
I don't think it's actually changed much from what I think about what equity should be. I don't think it's changed much. I think what has changed is that before I might have been a little more Pollyanna-ish, or I'm like pie in the sky, and this can happen, and I know, we're going to be able to do this, and I still think we can do it, but it's not going to be in the same ways that we think we can do it now, especially given the political environment that we're in.
Mhm.
I really am seeing, feeling, hearing that it's almost one person at a time. But the one person is a person who makes decisions that impact many. So it could be legislative, it could be a CEO, it could be a superintendent. And so equity doesn't begin by, for me, this is Diann.
Mhm.
Equity doesn't begin by just a program or something that you take action on. Equity actually begins with every individual looking inside and see where they are, who they are, what their identity is, and most importantly, how do they feel when they are challenged by things that are going on around them? How do they react? How do they respond? How do they think? Because I think equity work has to begin with mindset. It has to begin with mindset, and it has to begin with your heart. And if a person does not have that disposition, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you might do equity work, but might not be equity work that is embedded in every systemic part of an organization.
Mhm. Yeah, it's keep continuing learning, and on that note, as keep learning, you're mentoring future leaders. And you're mentoring me too. I'm telling you, I'm learning a lot even in this conversation and prior. But you spend a lot of your time now supporting and mentoring emerging leaders. What advice do you find yourself giving most often to those entering leadership today?
Well, one of the things that I say most often is that wherever you're interviewing, they need you more than you need them.
Mm,
I think especially for the Anapi folks, we have a natural disposition, and I'm generalizing by we, and I don't hope I'm not offending anybody. I have a natural disposition to defer, even to this day. I'm not one that's going to walk in the room and like start talking. I'm going to analyze. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to watch, and then I'll contribute. I'll do what I need to do to contribute, or to negate, or to divert, whatever it may be. But I do feel like the number of Anapi folks that are overlooked for positions they absolutely deserve is creating this sense of self-doubt.
mm,
And so, what I hear a lot when I am mentoring is self-doubt and a lack of confidence. I hear a lot of, I don't know why I'm not seen as a leader. And so we do a lot of unpacking of that. So that's one side of it. The other side of that, for what I do, is really preparing people for interviews and looking at their paperwork, and really helping them understand themselves as they're answering questions versus understanding themselves as it relates to that organization they're applying to or interviewing for versus regurgitating your resume. So I talk a lot with my people that work with me about what is your story? And then I really ask them to dig into that story and how it defines their identity. And just like I told you at the top of this, then I'll push them about their values. I'll push them about what is their values. And then we're going to get to what is their purpose on this earth? What is this purpose on this earth? You may be able to tell that I think my purpose really on this earth is much bigger than the work I'm doing. It's very, very much bigger. It's a bigger concept, a bigger idea about what our planet, my city, our environment should look like. And so I do think that's something I impart with the people that I work with, is that sometimes we're so laser focused on that next step, we forget to look at the multiple layers of who they are, what they want to go after, and the complexity of the educational system.
Mhm. And we're listening, hitting education, but I feel it's any journey that people are on, as they work, as they get out into the workforce. So on that note, there are many people that they struggle when they leave a role that really has defined them for much of their professional identity. But what has this season of life taught you about purpose beyond a position?
Yeah, that is such a great question because you're talking to someone that retired, quote unquote, in 2021, but has continued to work. I
Yeah.
mean, I've continued to work. So now what I say is I'm collecting my STRS check. I don't even use the R word. I say I'm collecting my STRS check. Woohoo, hallelujah, collecting a STRS check. But now I get to pick and choose the work I do on behalf of the, children, Anapi community, all that. So I do that. But I will tell you, it was a good year or so of me trying to figure out what my quote unquote new identity was because it was so wrapped up for 40 some odd years in being an educator and an educational leader. And so I had ups and downs like I'll get out like was not happy. I was happy. It just took me a while to kind of get to this place that I am now and that is, doing the work that I'm doing and being a contributor in the places that I'm contributing. I can tell you right now, my first go at retirement, the R, I tried gardening, I tried crocheting. I did try, and it drove me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So there are people that have a little crochet scrubby that's a one of the kind because I only made like 10 of them. And then I said, I gave away all of this stuff. I gave away everything because I'm like, I'm not doing this. I cannot sit and crochet. So the opposite of that is I love to travel, and I love doing the work I'm doing right now.
I want to pull out though that you said you gave it was like a year,
It
and
was like,
thank you for that too because it's a
mhm.
year now since I retired.
Ah,
And it is. I'm listening to what you're saying, and it does take time. But it even goes back to what you were saying about the new teachers as they're entering this profession. Well, where are you? What are you going? What's your purpose? So it's like you're starting and then you're ending the same way, and it's not ending. So yeah, thank you for being my counselor also right now. I appreciate that.
anytime, 11 years as a counselor and a master's in counseling. So, yeah,
Oh, yeah. So thank you for that.
of course.
So, Diann, throughout your life, you've carried stories of those who came before you while helping create opportunities for those who will come after you. And you just shared that. So, how do we honor the past without becoming trapped by it and continue moving forward with hope?
Mhm. Well, we joked about the counseling, but really it is it's a lot of counseling.
Yeah.
You really have to have a process. If it's a counselor, a friend, a clergy, someone you can talk to about what you've gone through or what you're feeling trapped by, or just actually talking and the recognition coming through as you're listening to yourself talk that you're using some of these things as an excuse because you might be scared
Mm,
or you might be, whatever it might be, but you're allowing this to hold on to you because for me, I was afraid to take that next step.
mm,
I was afraid to call out something that I knew needed to be called out, um, because I thought in my head, but what if? Maybe they will. And so a lot of what I do in my work too with others is I talk about, do you have a do you have the ball, the fortune telling ball? Like, can you predict the future?
uh,
And they'll say, well, no. I said, then why are you letting it trap you? Why are you letting it hold you back? Why are you worrying about something you have absolutely no control over? But let me tell you, Linda, it's taken me years to listen to my own advice. So even though I say this now very casually and with a lot of, energy, I didn't I didn't start out this way. I had to struggle along the way, find my way, get slapped around a little bit here and there, the system really can do a number with you. But the important thing is sticking to your values and your purpose to continue on your path.
As we start wrapping things up, as you
Yeah.
look back, your 44-year, that's still over, that is amazing to me. And you're still going.
Yep.
Um, but when you look back on that 44-year career, what moments bring you the greatest sense of gratitude?
I think that it is every time I encounter a former student,
Mm,
a former parent, a former colleague, a former board member, anybody that was in my life, either in my work or education, who I see again and encounter again, and they talk to me about their achievements, both personally and professionally,
mm.
and just in life. To me, it is so like spontaneous. Like I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't thinking about it. I don't think about those things until it's in your face. And the most recent one was at an AXA event a couple of weeks ago, AXA Association of California School Administrators. Okay, this is in California. And a woman walked up to me and she said, Mrs. Kitamura, do you remember me? And I'm looking at her and thinking, kind of, but I didn't tell her that. And she said, if it wasn't for you allowing me to graduate a year early, I would not have survived. I would not have made it. And now I'm a CBO in a school district. That to me is one of the most wonderful things could ever hear and gives me such a sense of gratitude and just fills my bucket, just fills my heart with love. It just really does. And perpetuates then my joy of freedom and wanting that for everybody else.
As I'm listening to you say that, I'm thinking, and to the listeners, I want to say, it doesn't take a lot to just thank somebody and what it does to you, and meaning thank them for whatever impact they made on your life.
Thank you.
It does a lot to people. It does a lot to our soul. And just take that time. That person took that time
She
to come up to
did.
you and say that. And
Yeah.
it really,
She wanted to take a selfie.
oh,
I
how
mean, it
cute.
was so cute. What that did though, it had me reach out to one of my former
There you
superintendents
go.
when I was an administrator, and I told him, I will never forget what you did for me and in being a sponsor for me. But number two, it's something I repeat everywhere I've been in all of my different positions, and that is, I'm going to support you. He said this to me and my admin team. I'm going to support you in any decision you make unless you break ed code.
True. You don't want to do that, that's for sure.
No, no, but he
No.
would never admonish in public. It would be behind the door that we would talk about what maybe I had done wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you use the word love. I mean, and what
Mhm.
that does to your body, to yourself and your brain, even when you give those positives and pull out something, however somebody affected you in your journey of life. So it does, it really affects. And then what you did is then push it on to somebody else.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
moving
Mhm.
it forward.
That's right.
So I
That's
do
right.
have one final question for you,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's this. It's basically hope for the future, moving forward in this future. So after everything you've witnessed, and oh my goodness, so much throughout
Mhm.
your career, your life, the challenges, the progress, the setbacks, the successes, what gives you the most hope today?
I think that there's a few, but the one that comes out like the quickest in my mind is when I get to work with people who have such great intention and vision for themselves and what they want to do on behalf of students and their colleagues, and they're making it happen. I think when I get to be an observer of that, and I get to do it a lot. There are so many talented people in our educational system that really gives me such hope. I teach at UC Berkeley in their EDD program, and this will be my third cohort that I start. And to have these folks come into this classroom with the ideas and thinking and um, their own hope for the future that they will put into action, that too gives me hope. That too gives me hope. And then I think finally it is my own children and my grandnieces who I continue to do this work for,
Mm.
and all my extended family. But I center it on them because if I am this way for them, if I am producing what I'm producing for them, I'm producing it for all children. And I've always believed that. I've always felt that way. And so it really is a grounding piece for me. So I have the external part with the folks that I get to encounter. But on a personal note, it really is. I look at my children, I look at my grandnieces, because I don't have grandchildren, and I'm very upset about that. But anyway, I do this so that they will have the freedom to be authentic and to love like me. And finally, I do this because of my mom and my grandma.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
So I again do not want this to end. However, your time is very precious, and I really appreciate that you took the time today to join me and for sharing your story so openly. Your story, your journey reminds us that leadership, it's not simply about the positions we hold, but about the values. Oh boy, and boy, did you get that point across. That the values we carry, the people we serve, and the paths we help create for those who come after us. And I heard that through this entire conversation.
Oh, I'm
I'm
glad.
sure the listeners did too. So, from
Um,
your family's history to your decades of service and education, and now, because you're not done,
I'm
your
not.
your work advocating though for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islander communities, your story is so powerful, and it's a powerful reminder that healing, progress, and hope are often built across generations, and definitely a part of the story. I want to thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, and your continued commitment to helping others move forward, as you stated. And to the listeners, I want to thank you for joining us for this episode. And I hope you hear this next comment I want to make, which is, may we continue to learn from the past and lead with compassion in the present and move forward with hope. And again, Diann, thank you, thank you, thank you for giving your time today.